Should we wait for Larry?
You're good.
Okay. T-minus 30 seconds.
I had another donut.
I had another.
When I read your vehicle thing, I thought you put an F-150 Raptor, and I got real excited.
No, we stay on the conservative end when it comes to purchase.
I got very excited.
You don't make it for Super Eaters Raptor, I don't think.
No, definitely not for 36 either.
I'm really not a fan of Fords, but that's
Are we
all
ready?
I'm saying.
Shh, we're out.
Ready, y'all? Okay.
Nope.
Ready?
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the January 19th, 2022 meeting of the Androscoggin County Commissioners. It is 5:15 p.m. I call this meeting to order. Will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Ford and Commissioner Krishner. Mr. Reynolds?
All right. Mason. I, Garrett P. Mason,
I, Garrett P. Mason,
do swear that I will support the Constitution
do swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and this state,
and this state,
so long as I shall continue
so long as I shall continue
a citizen therefore
a citizen therefore.
thereof. So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Garrett P. Mason,
I, Garrett P. Mason,
do swear that I will faithfully discharge,
will swear that I will faithfully discharge
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my abilities
the duties incumbent upon me
the duties incumbent upon me
as County Commissioner,
as County Commissioner,
District 4,
District 4,
for the County of Androscoggin,
for the County of Androscoggin,
according to the Constitution
according to the Constitution
and the laws of this state.
and the laws of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And if you would kindly sign there and then
Hello, sir.
You're the new man.
I'm the new guy.
Welcome, Commissioner Mason. We are so happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome. Okay. I could have a motion to accept and approve a waiver of the reading of the minutes. Do I have a motion to accept and approve?
We're sorry that we don't have the minutes tonight. Sandy was out last week and
Okay.
was hurrying to try to get them done, but we're not quite.
So should we table that?
Table them for next
Okay.
week.
Could I have a motion to table the reading of the minutes? Okay. Rowan, and do I have a second?
Second.
Rowan, Brian. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
So far, the new commissioner's doing a great job.
Okay. Review and approve bills and warrants. Do I have a motion?
I move, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we accept and review and approve of the bills, part-time deputy payroll, warrants 2202, 2203, 2204, 2222J, 2223J, 2224J.
Okay, a motion has been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Awesome. On to reports. The Maine County Commissioners Association. Are there any new developments? John?
I forgot I took that job.
Tied up in another meeting, so I didn't participate either.
I thought we gave it to Roland.
No, you tried.
You recorded tonight, I don't know.
You tried to put Roland on everything.
I'll try to get a phone number to call him.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Michael. And Central Maine Western Workforce Board, that would be me, and I don't have anything new to report, unfortunately. Treasurer's report. Madam Clerk.
So these, first off, they're unaudited, so they could change because, as you know, the auditors will be coming in a few weeks. So these are preliminary. And so far, with the exception of human resources and auditing, all departments are within budget. And we've discussed the HR and the auditing details. We're gonna be over.
You good?
Fine.
Call 911.
Sounded like it.
Call 911.
Sorry about that.
So other than those two, everything's looking really, really well. But these are preliminary. I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that.
And I'll just add that this is, as you know, the end of the fiscal year, so.
Just said that.
Do you have any questions for the treasurer? Yes.
Not so much on the report you presented us tonight, but on the new software that we authorized you to purchase.
Yep.
Where are we in converting it to?
Great question. We have our database is loaded. We have started entering the data. We have started training. Right now it's taking a little bit longer than it would have, but I have requested to have 2019, 2020, and 2021 for budget purposes, so that we'll be able to see the history of budgeting. So it's going to take a little bit longer to get it all in there. We are moving forward.
Is it meeting your expectations?
Oh, yes, yeah. Maybe.
It's wonderful. It's so much better.
Good.
That's what we were hoping.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
That's what we were hoping for. Do you have any further questions for the treasurer? And that is coming around to you with the warrants. Does that have to be, do we have to pass? We do.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. The administrator report?
I've just got a couple of things that I will mention to you. At least I have, if I can find the report. No, it's in my other agenda, but, be that as it may, it is right here. I've been reviewing ARPA materials and the final rules. As you already heard and seen, it's been sent to you, all 437 pages. I haven't read them all yet. And as I've communicated, the final rule allows $10 million for the same status as lost revenue portion in the interim rules. This allows more leeway and it allows use of funds. So we need to be looking at other things because it allows quite a lot of normal governmental activity. So we need to, again, take a harder look at where we're spending it now. Have been reviewing the new engineer's contract. The new one is based on a $5 million updated cost estimate with an engineer base fee of $400,000. I've been reviewing and updating our numbers for LD 1654, which is the new GEO funding proposal. And that's been kicking around for a couple of years. But anyway, they're trying again. So we had to come up with new base numbers for taxation for the counties. I have been calculating the new tax rate for towns and cities while still awaiting the final state valuation. before bringing it to commissioners for tax commitment approval. The tax rate for 2020 was $1.25 per thousand. For 2021 was $1.20 per thousand. And my proposal for 2022 will be $1.21 with overlay. And that's if the proposed state valuation doesn't change. So we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Wonderful. Do we have any questions for the administrator?
Are we supposed to have a copy of that, Larry?
Oh, I probably was, I think I was going to when the copier went down this afternoon, and so I didn't give you.
Trying to keep up with you and I couldn't find it.
That's fine.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Moving on to comments from the public. Do you have anyone who would like to speak at this time? Anyone online? No? You have one member of the public. I think. No? Okay, moving on to new business. ARPA funds mainly. Do we have a representative from the Community Little Theater here who would like to speak? Hello.
Good evening. Tim Cowan, I'm the president of the Community Little Theater, and myself and a few of my CLT colleagues will be presenting this evening. We're really pleased to be able to talk to you this evening about Community Little Theater's goals and vision for renovating the facility in which the theater is in. That facility is over 39,000 square feet in size, and the renovations that we would like to complete would give us the ability to use the spaces more efficiently, which in turn would enable us to increase the number of performances and events in the theater that can be had each year than we can currently do. It would allow us to repurpose some space to create a community art center in addition to the theater. And we want to use some money to update the theater so that we can enhance the experience of those coming to the theater for live theater performances as well as musical arts. So a little bit of history. Community Little Theater was established in 1940. It's a volunteer-driven, nonprofit organization, and we've been presenting high-quality theater performances for 82 years, and we fully intend to be providing those same high-quality or higher-quality performances for the next 82 years and beyond. And importantly, I want to point out that the Community Little Theater has been financially stable, independently financially stable for that 82 years. CLT has been performing the space we are in, which is part of the original Edward Little High School over on 30 Academy Street. We've been there performing since 1940. And in 1981, we entered into an agreement with the Auburn School Department to occupy and renovate the theater. There were some renovations done to the theater in 1982. More importantly, in 2011, Community Little Theater signed a 99-year lease with the city of Auburn to occupy, manage, and maintain that facility. That meaning the entire building that still exists. And so we have, since that time, put in some renovations, about $180,000 worth of renovations, but at the same time, we have created a vision that we're asking you to all consider to support financially. It will be an important contributor to enhancing our ability to contribute to the performing arts, education of our students, and to the economy of Androscoggin County. Bill Hamilton is here. He's a longtime Community Little Theater volunteer and architect, is here to talk to you in more detail about the planned renovations. But first, I want to have John Blanchett talk with you about one of the core components of Community Little Theater's mission, and that is contributing to the education, training, and experience of youth who are wishing to pursue activities in the theater. And as John is coming up, I'm going to pass out packets with information about our presentations.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great privilege tonight to speak to you about education at Community Little Theater. Education has always been one of the pillars of our purpose, and it is part of our mission statement. We have always provided opportunities for young people, but in 1981, we formalized that process by creating the Summer Youth Theater Program. This was designed for high school and college age students, gave them an opportunity for the young people of schools all over the county to work together and to put on a show. And it was a great opportunity. I myself came up through this program. I started in 1983 and I've been with Communal Theater ever since. In 2001, we changed the format a little bit. We became a more workshop-based youth program. We worked on fundamentals of auditioning, choreography, singing, and technical aspects. This is considered to be a more hands-on approach, giving our students a more broad-ranging experience and making them better at what they do. College-age students continue to serve as counselors and mentors for these young people, and I think they are also learning leadership skills at the same time. In 2009, we formally implemented what we now have, which is a youth camp and teen camp. Up to 40 kids participate in each camp. We offer need-based scholarships. No student is ever turned away based on financials. And to date, 1,200 plus young people have been involved in these programs. I believe we've had a significant impact. CLT focus on education goes much further though. One show each season usually features young people in some way. For example, our current production, the world premiere of the Beatles musical Let It Be, features 12 young people from ages 11 to 19. This summer we'll be producing School of Rock, and this is likely to feature even more young people. Also, if you look at the local schools, you'll see that CLT leaders are in key positions. In fact, the drama programs of Lewiston, EL, St. Dom's, Geiger Elementary, Levitt, and the Maine Arts Academy all have leaders or key personnel driving their drama programs. As we all know, performing arts are often the last to be funded in most schools and often the first to be cut in lean budget years. So we do what we can to ensure that these young people have opportunities within the performing arts. Another aspect of education, ironically enough, is that CLT rents costumes. Well, that sounds great for our bottom line, but how does that impact education? It turns out that we rent to schools ranging from Waterville to Saco at an incredibly affordable rate. We are literally subsidizing these programs to ensure that more young people get experience in the performing arts. Our highest rate is $300 for 30 costumes or more, a very affordable package for most schools and community theaters. And our education is not limited to just youth and teens. We provide workshops in lighting, sound, makeup, choreography, and auditions, to name only a few that we've held recently. We also do talkbacks with our audience for shows that warrant it. For example, The Crucible, Diary of Anne Frank, and The Laramie Project all involved a talkback where audiences could ask questions of the technical, the actors, and of course the directorial staff, giving them an opportunity to understand what the purpose was in producing these productions. So in closing, we hope that every participant at CLT, whether they're backstage, on stage, or in our audience, takes away something new each time and is better for the experience. Thank you very much. Oh, I should mention one thing before I forget. A lot of people say, you're a community theater, you know, that's all nice and people have a wonderful experience, but what does that mean in the long term? In your packet, you'll see a list of 31 young people who have gone on to make a career in the performing arts. Some of them very well placed, including Adam Barr, for example, who was the executive producer for Will and Grace back in the day. Beth Morrison, the daughter of Trip Morrison, who provides productions or helps to produce productions of new operas all across the country. It's a really impressive list for community theater. We're very proud of what we've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you just quickly about not what the Little Theater has done as an organization in the creative arts, but what that building means for us and what this building happens to mean for the community. I mean, it's great to have this kind of thing in any community, to have activities that will help everybody. And just like all the other sports and all the other activities that go on in the town. This is just one thing, one organization and one thing that just makes the community richer and better and better. building, though, is interesting. The reason, we took it because, and we've had it since, or have been using it since 1940. But when the town, when Auburn said, you know what, we'll give it to you for $1, of course, we weren't good businessmen. We knew damn well, soon enough, that $1 may be cheap to buy for the building, but when you have the maintenance and the responsibility of taking care of it, that cost is significantly better. However, the building itself is unique. The first floor of it, just one open tube, 20 feet tall, 70 feet wide, and 200 feet long. Has a theater in one end of it. The old stage, which I happen to, I've only been doing this for 40 years at Little Theater. And my daughter, and my son, and everybody else has all gone through it. But the value of that building is because it has no columns on the first floor, and there's none on the second floor. Well, the second floor is because there's a third floor in there. You're going to see in there, if you look at the drawings, and you don't have to study them now, but I expect you're going to want to put these on the wall and mount them because they're very, very nice. Building is, we're going to propose, someday we hope to put a second floor in the gym because we're not using it as a gym. We use it to build sets. We use it to do practices. We use it for all kinds of uses. Just us, which is too bad. So we're going to try to turn that gym into introduce a black box, what they call black box theater, where we can practice. Anybody else can practice. And that will mean that the stage can be used all the time. We don't have to be occupying it for 5 or 6 weeks while we put on each play. And that'll open it up to lots of other people to use it and to benefit us and to benefit the community. We are talking about it, and it makes sense that by doing those, adding that second floor in the gym, we're going to put all the costumes that are on the top floor, and they're not totally occupied, but most of it, down onto this second floor, above a space that is going to have the shop in it, with a door directly behind right through the back wall into the stage, and the black box behind it, and then with all those costumes down there and the basement floor for a green room and other storage and stuff, we could free up that top floor so it could be used by anybody again. Other people that can rent that space or can just use it inefficiently. The other neat thing about it is it isn't particularly expensive. I mean, it's more money than I make in a week. Well, maybe 4 or 5 lifetimes. But it's not going to take a lot of money to let the top floor become just space that people use. There's another space up there on the top floor, the old library. I'm sure all of you used it. I don't know about that. But the library is big enough to be, our set is to equal the stage that we have down below. And that's what we use it for, just a practice room now. But really we'll be able to use that black box, that stage up above, and free up the rest of that whole top floor for anybody else to use and for revenue for us. It isn't going to require that we build a whole lot of spaces or walls or reinforce things. We would like to suggest, and we are thinking certainly about the potential of putting an elevator in there. The elevator will go on the side by now. Just a very simple process of putting it in. It's a few dollars, a bunch of dollars. Like the whole space is probably close to $1 million for that. But it frees up the whole building to be that much more accessible to everybody. So if you look at those drawings carefully and call me at any time of day, not too late at night, I'll be glad to go into the details of it. So, glad to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any questions? Or did
Do you have some questions for Bill?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead and answer the
Certainly.
question.
Certainly.
Do we
Yeah,
have-
I didn't go through each plan, so go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just asking if anyone had any questions.
Oh, I don't.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bill. I just wanted to add a few closing comments. One is to point out kind of the scope and reach of the theater. I was so pleasantly surprised when we were looking at where our theater goers or our patrons live. Only 43% live in Auburn or Lewiston. We have 20% of our patrons who live in every other town across Androscoggin County. And importantly, we have 40% of our patrons who are coming from towns in all 5 of the counties that surround Androscoggin County and beyond. So we wanted to point out that every year we're bringing in folks who could potentially stop to refuel or come in for dinner. But it's great that we have such a reach, and that's been pretty consistent. And it's exciting to think with the potential of what's in the drawings here and what's being proposed, by creating a black box theater in addition to the already practice space we have, we're talking a great deal more opportunity for that theater to be utilized than we currently have. So that's more folks who are going to be coming in. There is a sheet in here that you can look at in terms of where exactly our patrons come from. And then finally, on the summary page, I did want to give you the current estimate for the project based on Bill's expertise in talking with contractors for the various components of what we are looking to do to complete this renovation and repurposing of the facility. The estimate is $4,733,000. And for that square footage of a little over 39,000 square feet, it's pretty cost-effective renovation and repurposing of making that space much more useful and more broadly used. We are in the beginning of our fundraising campaign. We're coming to you first to ask for support through ARPA funds. We will continue conversations with the City of Auburn, and we'll be reaching out to the City of Lewiston also to ask them for funding. And we will be reaching out to foundations, local businesses, our local patrons, but foundations and national organizations. And wanted to point out that for national foundations and national organizations, they appreciate seeing evidence of local support, financial support, and so any and every dollar that you all decide to provide to us would have the ability of bringing in additional funding. I just want to update the amount I said that we've already raised and put into the building. I hadn't in my head calculated the new canopy out front of our building that was just recently put in, but we have generated and put in renovations of just over $240,000 so far. What we're asking of you and respectfully requesting your consideration for a contribution to this project of $3 million. And so I think if you have any other questions now, or certainly Bill could follow up on the plan, but welcome to entertain any questions if you have for any of us.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll follow up.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thank you. Okay. EMA ARPA presentation?
I have got to tell you that Angela Molino, the EMA director, who was going to be here making a presentation tonight, she has been trying to get a tooth fixed and is in pain and agony.
Oh.
And she was afraid that if she came, she would sound as incoherent as I do if she were here. So she asked to be placed on the next agenda.
Okay. She, is on the mend. So we move ahead to the EMA mutual aid agreement.
That mu-
We'll put that on.
That mutual aid agreement, you can delay it until, but quite frankly, it's very simple. It's between counties, a mutual aid agreement between counties. If another county needs us or something that we do, we'll help them. If we need something from another county, they'll help us. It's just a traditional mutual aid agreement that we would ask you to consider, and if you want to vote on it tonight, that would be good.
Do we have any thoughts or feelings about that?
Just clarification.
Yeah.
So we had one of these already, we signed this, we do this how often?
I'm not sure that we do currently have a mutual aid agreement, to be honest with you. And if so,
This is something new as far as
Probably.
formalizing it. Is that what
yeah,
you're
it's just a formal thing that the counties have all gotten together and determined that would be good to do. If we did have one, it was years and years ago, and I haven't seen it. But
Question on that. Does that include any expense cost sharing between counties? How would that work? Is there reimbursement? or-
It's essentially, we're not gonna be out, we're not gonna spend $1 million going to help some other county. They're going to be responsible. We'll send our staff for the most part, if they need us, and we'd be responsible for them, but other than that.
So the calling county is the one that's
Yes.
responsible, okay, all right.
If you want to look on page 3, item E, kind of addresses your questions.
Yeah, obviously, if something happens to your vehicle, you get in an accident, and that's your responsibility.
Is there any interest in a motion this evening or tabling the next meeting?
Do we have to table, or we just?
Well, we don't have to, but, since EMAs,
Well, I move that we continue to the next meeting's agenda.
okay, a motion to table?
I'll second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of tabling the EMA mutual aid agreement until the next meeting? Opposed? Okay. Moving on. Sheriff Department vehicle bid. Yes, sir.
Hi, we did go out to bid recently for new vehicles for the sheriff's office. We did get our bids back from 3 Ford dealerships. And the winning bid was Quirk on both vehicles. We were looking at a Seek 1 pickup truck, which is a police rated vehicle, as well as the Interceptor, which is like the Explorer. We're looking for 4 of those and 1 pickup.
And how much did you say?
The total amount, I don't have in front of me, the pickup was
$172,380.
what Commissioner Hayes said.
And Larry
Yes.
and Clarice, this would fall under ARPA funds.
Under that new rule,
Revenue
yes.
loss, yep.
And what this would do, if we block those under ARPA, because right now we're making payments. We're still making payments for past, and we'll continue to make payments for future if nothing changes. What this will do, if we can purchase this from ARPA and still maintain those in our budgets, then at some point here in probably 3-4 years, we'll be able to stop purchasing vehicles instead of leasing and then doing a lease purchase. So
If you remember right, I've had a long-term goal of getting off borrowing to save money on interest and do it with payments. But it's kind of hard to keep up on the capital when you have a fleet of over 30 vehicles. Replacing them, which rack up more miles since the state police changed the call share agreement. That was one anticipated thing that we discovered. And to establish a cash account, which we were looking to do this year, but realized it wasn't the year. By using the ARPA funds, we'll be able to take this year's payment, create the capital account for the vehicles, and then next year an account expires. you know, and we'll worry about that then, but at least it'll give us a base to get the process started. So if we could build up like an account with, we'll say, $300,000 in it for capital purchases, when we go out to bid, we can pay for the cars cash, do it with payments, do it with the interest and all the financing that goes along with it. And it'll also make it where we can be more flexible with our purchases, whether it's, you know, 2 at a time or scale back 1 year or up 1 year. Right now, we're just trying to keep up. So it'll give us, you know, cash in the bank, budgeted appropriately for the vehicle, capital plan all along, gives us all kinds of opportunities to do it a little different.
Commissioner?
Is this replacement vehicles, or does this add to the fleet?
Does not add to the fleet, it's replacement vehicles.
Okay, Commissioner Ford?
So when we passed the budget earlier not this year, last year, how much did we budget for payments on these vehicles?
Like 50 or 60,000.
The total line was like 155,000.
But that's divided by 3, so it's like 50 or 60,000. Because what it is, currently we're financing the vehicles for 3 years. So what we really financed was a payment. And not that this was but there was 1 year where we really had a problem for cars, a different treasurer, different setup. But they would say, well, you're budgeting payments, so you can go out and buy more cars than you were planning on, as long as your payment fits. But we always tell you what we're buying for cars, and we stick to the same payment, because the cars only last us 4 or 5 years anyway. Majority of the fleet. So we budgeted the payment.
All right, so you budgeted 155,000 for car payments?
Mm-hmm.
For the payments?
Because some of these are, we're paying for 2019, we're paying for 2020s, 2021s, and 2022s. It's car payments.
Okay, so how much of the 155 was going to be to make the payments on these 5 vehicles?
I'd say $52,000. It's a guess, and we base it off what we did last year, because we also have some cash on hand that we use for purchases as well.
So one of the challenges when we go through the budget is that we seem to budget for things and then the money gets moved around, not used for the purpose that it was set up for. So how can we as commissioners,
if you want,
make sure that if we do this, that we are going to get ourselves out of the borrowing position going forward?
Clarice is going to establish a capital account for vehicle purchases. So the money, the increase or leftover money from last year, because it's not an exact science, you never know what you're looking at, because you never know what the bids will be, you never know what interest rates are going to be. So what was budgeted for the new payment this year, along with what we might have left over, will be put into an account that Clarice establishes. And we'll be using the ARPA money to save that money to give us the opportunity to get out of the borrowing cycle. Did I explain that correctly? That's the plan.
Okay. So you can calculate exactly what will be left over, because if you already have contracts on previous vehicles, you know what your payments are. So you could come back to us and give us an exact amount. Is that correct?
Yeah, and some of it is based on what we get for trade-ins. You know, there's some cars we trade in, we get $1,500, $2,500 for. There's other cars we trade in, get $5,500 on. There was a car or two that we got really good money on that was not really expected. So that affects the balance of what we finance. And at this point will affect the balance of what we deposit in, because we get rid of the cars with 150,000 miles on them. Follow what I'm saying?
Well, yes and no. Okay.
Well, right now, our cars are worth a lot more than they were last year at this time. So a car that we were saying, based on what they've done at auction, we'll get $5,500 for a trade, we're getting $7,500 for. You multiply that times 5, and then you get an occasional kicker with one that's bringing a little bit higher than that. It creates an opportunity for savings.
But prior to the budget being approved,
Yes.
we had scheduled payments based on the number of cars that we've already purchased.
Mm-hmm.
That amount of money is a set amount, and then on top of that, and I understand, you calculated a best guess estimate of what you would be spending on these 5 vehicles. But now that you are no longer going to have to make the payments on that, what was that amount that you best guess you were going to have to use?
My best guess would be $52,000, right around there. Do you remember?
Well, I guess I'd like to get an exact number from the treasurer. Is what I'd like to do. We recently have had problems with numbers. Last month, we spent a lot of time talking about different costs. There was misunderstandings concerning the healthcare. There's been other, and I guess I just feel that we should get an exact answer.
Get the exact figure? If you want to, unless
Well,
you know.
Reese will have it.
We can have it
Do
next.
tomorrow.
Well, we can't do it tomorrow because they're not going to approve the vehicle purchases unless we get into it. So we kind of need.
It's roughly
He's
40.
not, I've already told him that. All right, well, if you could move on to the next thing, we'll figure out what we put in the budget for the vehicle.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So we'll come back to that.
Thank you.
PSAP fees? Do you have any information?
All right, where are we? I'm sorry.
PSAP fees.
PSAP.
PSAP.
Sheriff?
Yeah.
PSAP?
That's their thing.
Okay. Sheriff and I had, the Commissioner Poirier, and he has been very interested in the PSAP thing. We sat down. Sheriff and I since sat, and as you know, there was some serious consideration back in the fall of LA 911 coming and joining with the county. That ended up, and there was some concern about the small towns. Their tax increase was going to be pretty high. And so they had some issues with that. It turned out that for right this moment, Lewis and Auburn has kind of backed off on the wanting to come aboard. However, our strong feeling is that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen probably relatively soon. And so then you look at, okay, what happens to the PSAP rates, and how should we go? Now, there was, originally some thinking was, well, if it doesn't pass and the small towns kind of the cause that it doesn't pass, then, the consolidation, then let them pay to the PSAP rates. But being the case that, the kind of put on hold from Lewis and Auburn, and we're again strongly of the belief that it's going to happen, then you don't want to do away with or increase your fire too much, because they can go most anywhere to be dispatched. Police, you don't want to raise those too much, because we're already having problems with not knowing what police is going on in the smaller communities, and whether in essence some of them will have to have an agreement with the county to take those over. So that looks at the PSAP rate, which was the lowest rate, and then our thinking was, if we make that, don't increase it too drastically, because the higher you make your PSAP rates, the lower your tax is going to be. And so if you lower that tax rate too much, and then it all comes together, your tax rate is going to have a bigger impact than what it would be if you just modestly increase those. So that was the thinking. And so our thinking came, we had put this together at a 5% increase each year. Sheriff says, well, maybe 25 cents. So 5% is what you have in front of you. And that's a logical way to go until everybody finally does what needs to be done.
The other issue you look at when we made the recommendation after looking at everything involved regarding the PSAP is most of the reasons for the staffing level increases, the training, what's taking the most amount of time as far as quality assurance and EMS, and now you get fire protocols to follow. It's the PSAP that this answering the 911 calls that are, you know, the driving costs that are taking up majority of the time that require you to have two on 24 hours a day. And also we're providing PSAP services to every community except Lewiston, Auburn, and Poland. So everybody contributes, and it's where the workload's coming from. It's not the fire calls, it's not the police calls, it's the 911 calls. So when you look at the adjustments, you know, regardless of whose opinion what consolidations may happen when it comes to communications to 911 center, and then what you'll be dealing with as far as like what we looked at last year with how it affected the tax rate with fees going away, how big of a jump do you want to swallow, how insurmountable do you want it to be, as well as if you start charging for dispatch services, these agencies can leave us and go back to getting dispatch wherever they want. So the PSAP fee was what we recommended. If the commission needs to make an adjustment or wants to make an adjustment, that's where we all agreed it should be. In other words, you're not required to, but there seemed to be a desire by the commissioners to adjust the rate that you set. And from that, we work together to what's the best option here. And our recommendation is make an adjustment to the PSAP fee. There may be consolidation of police departments down the road, so if you lose the revenues there, it'll create a jump in taxes at the time, along with a loss of revenue that'll be planned on because we're on calendar year, they're on fiscal. So it also helps to avoid any problems that may arise during any given year with what we're looking at right now.
Is there a committee or a subcommittee that is looking into the service of 911 and to put in recommendations as to what it will look like in the future with all participating towns?
Or what level? I mean,
the whole operation.
Well, the state has done that, and we're always left to deal with what the state does. So they have groups that oversee it and create requirements. They've consolidated PSAPs throughout the years. I think right now there's 16 to 21, where before, just in our local community, I think there was 4 or 5. So the state has already put its hand in to bring reductions in 911 centers or PSAPs. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the local officials, we'd only have 1 in our community. We have 2. And there's other counties that have the same, which is why the number isn't exact to the county. The Department of Public Safety has reduced theirs, like they shut down Gray, moved it all to Augusta, and they're having staffing concerns. Sometimes consolidations cut too deep, and you can only draw so much staff from one area. So, for instance, the troop around here that is dispatched to Augusta now, as opposed to Gray, they were so short staffed that they were getting dispatched through, like the Holton Dispatch Center. You can get dispatch from anywhere, which is why we're saying stick with the PSAP. But as far as a working group other than EMS, state EMS, or governing bodies like that, I can't say there's any groups that are actively looking at more consolidation, and there's definitely no desire for expansions. If anything, I'm a big proponent of dispatch centers should be closed because they delay 911 responses, and the goal should always be a seamless 911 service. So communities that have dispatch centers in place are actually creating issues with public safety for their communities, but some desire to have a dispatch center in place.
I'm wondering, with Lewiston Auburn pulling away from the project, how does that change, the overall scope of what's happening? Like, what's the?
It doesn't change anything for me. I don't believe it changes anything for them. It results in 2 centers operating locally. That's been a long-held desire for the small towns looking to avoid the high cost of what it takes to run LA 911. For LA 911, they get to maintain the center that they desire with the services how they want them, and that kind of control. Both centers are paid for through taxes, so the residents of those communities have a cost to that, but some elect to. There's one community in Androscoggin County, it's a parochial thing, they have a dispatch center at a pretty good expense, where they could have substantial savings if they got their dispatch services through either the county or a contractor with LA 911, but they choose not to. So neighborhood schools over big schools, communities do it differently. So that's pretty much it. The service is staying the same.
Do you have any other questions?
Did you say there was a 5% increase in cost, is what you proposed?
Yes.
So the current total is 284,000.
Okay, now, you're gonna have some variation because of the population change from the last census.
We gave you 5% as something for you to work with. Without getting too carried away, and it's 5% off a very low number. That's why looking at it, I said maybe we should just go a quarter every year, because it breaks
So
it.
It's 284 currently for 2022.
Correct.
And then 2023 would go to 296, 919. 2024, 302, 645. And 2025, 308, 812.
So the total increase over a 3-year period is 24,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Some people, it's been my experience, if you say it's a 10% increase, that's what makes the headlines, and it's 10% off a small number. That's why after looking at this 5% thing, it's probably not accomplishing what the commissioners were looking to accomplish. I went back to Larry's office and said, maybe we go with a quarter, because a quarter doesn't seem unreasonable. I don't know what the percentage breaks down to, but I'm sure it's more than 5%. It's probably
So when we talk about controlling the costs, the communities of Lisbon, Lewiston, and Auburn are subsidizing this for these other communities. Is that not correct?
Well, Lisbon is actually, we're Lisbon's PSAP. Lisbon had a PSAP at one time, they lost it, but elected to keep their dispatch center. So they're paying the PSAP fee, but they're not paying for fire or police dispatch because they have dispatchers to do that themselves. So our 911.
Correct. So we're paying
They're paying their taxes to run our center,
Correct.
just like every other community is. And in addition, to offset the cost of it, they're paying a per capita fee for the PSAP service that we provide.
Correct. Now, what you don't have here is how much this department is costing us.
How much our department is costing us?
This whole PSAP department, what is the cost of it coming?
I think the budget was,
800.
yeah, it was 800-some thousand, but that wasn't all in because the benefits are done through the treasurer's office, so it's
A little over $1 million if you take all the benefits and everything.
I guess I'm trying to understand this. We're collecting 300,000, let's just say for the sake of conversation today. And you're saying to run that department is costing us $1 million.
yeah.
So
again,
$700,000 of that is raised by property taxes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're saying is that 3 communities specifically are paying for more than 60, basically 70% of this, are helping pay that 70% shortage. But yet, with Lisbon getting a small portion of it, I guess the Leeds, based on what I can see there. But Leeds is subsidizing, Lisbon is subsidizing, and Lewiston Auburn is also subsidizing in total. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe.
And we have the.
I mean, I don't
We
like.
have the budget committee telling us that they're concerned about the mill rate.
Well, we offered those.
So we're doing this,
those
but we're
the
doing
chance
this
to
as a loss
consolidate,
leader.
and they-
I guess I'm trying to understand our concept.
It all comes down to choices, and the sheriff just said, we offered them, to come aboard, and right now wasn't the time, for that to happen, and they were, but we think it's gonna be relatively soon.
So when they come on board, how are we gonna pay for this?
Through taxation. That seems to be the logical way to do it. You can do it, half a dozen different ways, but the only logical way would be through valuation and taxation.
It would kind of be, I don't know if it'll ever happen. It's not one of my things, but everybody knows where I stand. I'm willing to do it. But I would say from what I looked at, the easiest way and the most is take the 1-year lump and go for taxation. It's a system that is established not by us, but that's a conversation for another time. It can be funded however you want. But where you're going with this operational cost is, if we weren't dispatching for any of these agencies, and you're talking about Lewis and Auburn, Lisbon subsidizing, they subsidize the bulk, along with, I think, Poland, of county government. But if all of them were to pull out, we would still have to dispatch for our own patrol division. So at that point, we'd be bringing in no revenue to offset the costs for the 911 calls for our patrol division and to dispatch our patrolmen to the calls. So it's a revenue that offsets an expense that we're going to have anyway, because unless you want to, bring in the cost to pay out of network for dispatching services. And
But can't we do the same thing that you're saying to me that the towns can do? The towns, you said one of the concerns was you didn't want to bring up the price because the towns will go somewhere else for dispatch service.
Yeah.
Is that not something that we as a county can also do, go look for someplace else to do our dispatch for us?
It wouldn't be in our best interest, especially when you look at all things shared with Lewis and Auburn right now, like the records management system and things like that, that actually put us all on the same network with the exception of Lisbon because they're on their own records management system, but save the officer on the street for Lewis and Auburn PD's time because all the booking information is backfilled by our correctional staff. That's all done through dispatch. LA 901 holds the server for it. We have the backup server here, but we're all on the same system. It makes it very easy for when we assist Lewis and Auburn PD or they assist us as well to get information or offense numbers or reports off the system because they're right there available to us. As a matter of fact, we had the discussion for Lisbon shutting down their dispatches a few years ago. The chief called and said, can we get on your records management system? Because he realized how advantageous it would be for his patrolmen. But we don't have a fee structure to charge, and there was little incentive for us to create the confusion to be able to do that, even though their records of Lisbon would be valuable to the system because you're building a database. What I'm trying to say is, this is your fee, it always has been. It was brought to us, you want to make an adjustment, we're making a recommendation. Do it with what you will, run by us any ideas, I'll tell you the fears or the potential consequences. When we got all these people in, we were paying to run a dispatch center that wasn't working to its capacity. So we went to these communities like Greene and Wales and Sabattis to solicit them to come on to bring in a revenue to offset the expense. We are going to have the expense regardless. So now we're dispatching for these agencies with a fee structure that the commissioner set to offset the expense that we already have because we still have to dispatch for our own. And as far as sending our dispatch services or contracting with somebody else, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that, and I think it's not needed. Then you're not in control of the cost, you're not in control of the systems. We just did a whole radio upgrade that was $1.8 million. We're managing that, we're maintaining that. We've got equipment down there. When you talk to consoles and a capital plan in place, when I look at agencies that call us from outside of the county because they're getting kicked out of their dispatch center because they can't keep up with the employees, or it would just leave us totally vulnerable. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. So we have an established center that's working well, that's been in place and supported by the communities for decades. I would think shutting it down, for whatever reason, there might be a desire to contract elsewhere when we're seeing agencies struggle to get dispatch services would be a huge mistake. As a matter of fact, I don't even want to read about this in the paper tomorrow because of how the employees will react to it.
do we have costs that other dispatch centers charge their communities? In other words, are we,
Well, we only do
what I'm trying to ask you here is, have we priced this with the market? That's all I'm trying to ask.
Well, every, like Saginaw County, I think they do it for free for all their communities. As a matter of fact, when I met with Elizabeth, they're like, we would like to get on Saginaw, but Saginaw doesn't have to take you because you're not in their county. Well, why can't you provide it for free? Well, we could if we were dispatching for everybody, because it wouldn't make sense to have a fee structure. So everybody's looking out for the dollar, and I think a lot of us, especially, you know, leaders in Lewis and Auburn and myself, we're looking out for the public safety aspect of it all. When you look at Cumberland, I think it might be the reverse, because they have a couple of centers where, like, I think it's Portland and South Portland and maybe Cape Elizabeth are doing the Lewiston and Auburn deal. So the Cumberland County one is based entirely, I think, on a fee structure model. So it is done differently at different places. To give you the number or the model, I don't know. I mean, the model I prefer is doing away with the fee structure, but I understand why it's there. It was put in place to bring in some revenue to appease members of the budget committee, because every year there was the same comment about who's subsidizing who. But unfortunately, it's county government. How the taxation is raised to run it was formed somewhere in the state. We'll be dispatching our deputies, bringing in the Savatises and the Wales and the Greens when they weren't here back in 7 years ago, is just bringing the revenue to offset the cost that we're already gonna have. So I wouldn't get carried away with it, because, you know, Wales was never with us up until a few years ago. I guess they could go back to where they are, much like Leeds is somewhere else because they don't have a high call volume for their fire. Double-edged sword, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to take all the time on this subject, but it has consequences too. Normally, if you have two operations that are similar, close by, there's economies of scale to merge, you know. What is your best argument for endorsing two different 911 centers?
It's what the administrations of the other center prefer. I don't have an argument for it. This was part of your time, but we just did a year's worth of work on consolidation of the two centers under the county. And in the end, the communities of Lewis and Auburn elected to stay with their center. So, you know, we explored it, we looked at it, no harm, no foul. They wanted a governance board that was never really defined, and that just kind of ended the conversations. We still have great, you know, working relationship with them. We do. They're our backup. We're their backup. You do need some redundancy.
Oh, yeah.
We share a records management system. We look at joint purchases when it comes to things like that, because it's beneficial to all. But I don't have an argument against it, nor am I out here saying it should be done, because it's to some extent up to the people, and I can respect that.
Any other thoughts? Commissioner Mason?
Sheriff, can you tell me a couple of things? I know that the PSAT dispatch conversation has been going on for a very long time with Lisbon and Auburn. I remember dealing with it when I was in the legislature. My first question is, why is there a belief that Lewis and Auburn will join eventually or soon? If they're not going to join now, why is it going to happen more quickly or in the near future?
I'll only tell you a couple of things that I've heard. Number one was they thought about a governance board, and they were at a couple of meetings where the person that sat in your seat, they were not comfortable with, and so they, you know, I think that was probably the start of the governance board idea, and so it just sort of faded away.
Understood.
Well, I think you've been around long enough to realize that regardless of how it's set up as quasi-municipal or a joint venture, there's some comfort in a level of control and authority over it. And I think in the end, when you look at some of the risk factors that were involved and the lack of having that might have created a hindrance this last time. Again, it's something we've made it clear we'd be willing to sit down again and do. It's nothing I'll put pressure on. It's never been a goal of mine. I do think there's another center that it makes sense to consolidate, but the town doesn't want to do that, so I've left it alone. Because I do kind of go with the theory, it's up to the people. You know, they have an elected board that decided against it. The former town manager knew it was out there. There's been 3 police chiefs now that know the opportunities out there. Maybe someday that'll happen. I think it should. As far as the Lewiston Arbor situation, I think it could, but it will always, anything we do moving forward is with that in mind, so you can be prepared, because you don't want to have a reason, you don't want as obstacles in place, whether it's after I'm gone or, you know, while I'm here. I just assume the agency be prepared for that. So it will be. We know the square footage involved and things of that nature. It's not really that much to compensate when you look at what we're looking at overall.
Yeah, and my second question is, you know, obviously this is my first meeting. When do you absolutely have to have PSAP rates set?
There's one town, I believe you represent the town, that was actually calling to say we need the figure now, which brought this up. Although we had discussions prior about their due because they're set for 3 years. Again, it's the commissioner's PSAP fee.
Right.
We just provide the service, and I made that very clear to the town. We've always been asked for recommendations. Didn't mean to create a controversy. I definitely have opinions over it because I worry it could be counterproductive depending on what happens, but we clearly thought that the PSAP was the one that would be most reasonable to adjust and wouldn't create unintended consequences by increasing it.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Paul?
So the total increase is 24,000 across over 3 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we did give you, like I said before, we gave you 5% as an example. It wasn't a recommendation. You can do 3, you can do 10. But I just know from sitting on the city council end, when you hear 10% and when you read that in a headline, but when you see it's 7 cents, it's a little different. And you get to see what 5% does. That's why after looking at it, I didn't think 5% did much. And I said, well, maybe you look at a quarter, because a quarter, while not a percent, it's a figure. But that's totally, it was just an example. Whether you follow it or not, it's.
Well, my concern is, honestly, that we're looking at an operation that's going to, our costs are going to go up much higher than 24,000 in a period of 3 years. So we're not even maintaining the cost split as we currently have. Because if we think this department's only going to cost us $24,000 more over the next 3 years, what we're really saying is we're going back to the mill rate, and we're going to have to increase that rate higher. To give this break on this product today, we're honestly saying we are voting indirectly to raise the mill rate.
No, and like I said, we gave you this rate as an example. We asked the communications director, give us an example using 5% so we can provide to the commissioner so it will give you some baseline there. It's your rate. You know.
Yeah, I realize that, but I don't think we're being realistic to our communities by telling them that they can have the service for $24,000 over the next extra over the next 3 years. We're really not telling them the truth there.
It's very arbitrary.
Again, it's a combination of fees and taxation. And, you know, what Lewiston Auburn aside and what they pay for taxation, the rest of the communities as well are in that same mold of paying part by fees and part by taxation. So.
Is there any action that we need to take this evening regarding the PSAP fees? Do we need to take any action this evening regarding?
Again, we're starting to get calls from towns that are starting to do their budget saying, what's our number?
You happen to have the number for 25 cents? You could just do the 5%.
Unfortunately, I don't.
I could probably bias the 2 weeks, but it can't be one of these things that lingers on. Like, we're having problems with other things, like the medical contract for the jail, or this vehicle thing could really set us back. So I don't think it's, if I can call the chief back that asked, and I don't know if there's any, I'll be willing to say the commissioners wanted another 2 weeks to mull it over. But it's something that kind of needs to be resolved because they're starting to put their budgets together now. And some of them, I think, have town meetings in March. So.
Yeah.
What is our, feeling overall? Do we want to hold it over until the next meeting, or what's the general consensus?
Well, if things are gonna be the same, I think it is not gonna be a good idea as far as I'm concerned, but I would have liked to see more justification for these figures. It's like, are we throwing the can down the road as far as revenue shortfall or increased expenses? I don't know. I don't even know what questions to ask at this point because I'm not familiar too much with that. But it's a hell of a way of doing accounting to pay for a service. That's all my bottom line is.
Commissioner Michael, Commissioner Ames, do you have any thoughts, feelings?
I don't think 5% is high enough. I'd love to see another number, but.
What's the administrator recommend?
You have my recommendation, which is the 5% that we had talked about. And I understand though, but what that does, that also keeps that tax level, from, it keeps that tax level even for the smaller towns, so that when, and eventually it's going to happen, and it's not gonna be such a big jump, that they're going to be, screaming bloody murder when it does. And again, it's a combination of fees and taxes. So that's how it's paid.
But what is our desire? Table until the next meeting? Move forward. Table?
Let's move.
Can we get the
Do
numbers?
we have a motion to table?
Because we don't.
Do we need a motion to table?
Question here. Commissioner.
Oh, yes, Commissioner.
Well, if you take, we can't get the current year's 255. So if you take 25 cents from that, I'll add to that.
I'm sorry, where are you getting the, what are you saying, what's 255?
The PSAP current rate is 255, that's per capita. And so, be 280 instead of 268. And then, 280 and 25 would be 305 instead of 281. And then, 305 and 25 would be 330 instead of 295.
In the past, now that I think about it, when the last time the commissioners did this, they picked percents I guess they were comfortable with and said, can you get us the figure on that? I don't know what you guys need to help you set your fees, but if it's an adjustment to, what 5% is, but we'd like to see 10 and 15% or a flat rate increase, and then we can run that and get it back to you, if that'll help you. And I'm not trying to wash my hands of it, but it was always been made clear to me, you're providing the service, this is our revenue thing. I'm just a little apprehensive when, if you make too many adjustments, you might lose revenue as well, so.
Commissioner Ames, you said that you would like to see 6 or 7%? What
Or
number?
if you wanna set a percentage and we just plug it in and send out the bills as that, we can do that too. Or Larry can do that.
What numbers would we like to see? You wanna say, 7%? I would look at 7%.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at.
Are you asking
Yes.
for a sheet on 7% increase?
Yeah, and I'm asking if, any other commissioners have, thoughts or, recommendations, percentages that they would like to see.
Well, it's a better representation of cost. 7% rather than make it 0%.
I'd say we just do a 5, 7, and 10% comparison. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay.
Or just give me the Excel spreadsheet and I can play with it myself.
I'd be happy to give it to you, but I didn't come up with this one, so the guy that's got it was out sick today, so we'll get that to you.
Okay, if that's something that, is doable for the next meeting, too.
It's apparently gonna have to be, so we always get by.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Are we all set to move forward with the vehicle bid? You have that
The
information?
treasurer has the figure, I believe, of how much we budgeted for a car payment.
Yeah, so based on 5 cars, it would be about 50,000 that we would be saving, that we would be able to slide into a reserve. And that would compound, that would be for 3 years. So, the first year and then another 50 years.
Yes, Commissioner Reyes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve $172,380 out of the ARPA funds for the vehicles.
Could you accept the bid too? Nobody's ever accepted the bid, I don't believe.
And I'll accept the bid from Quirk Auto.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll second
okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion regarding the vehicle bid? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay,
It was plus 50 every year, you said?
Yeah, it'd be 50 more.
okay. Moving on to item 6, ARPA sub-grant approval.
As you recall, the last meeting, we didn't have the signature page in front of you, so we tabled it.
Okay. Yep.
And so I told Clarice that we should have just sent you just the signature page,
Right.
but they never.
Okay. So this is this, we need to approve the verbiage, or what do we?
Yeah, we need to approve it, because we didn't have the
Okay.
last sheet where you
Okay,
actually signed for it last
Gotcha.
time.
so we're tabling this until the next meeting?
We tabled it last time.
Tabled it last time.
Because we didn't
We have
have
it
the
this
last
time.
sheet.
Okay, I understand, thank you.
Make a motion to accept
Yes.
the
Okay.
revised sub-grant agreement.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the sub-grant agreement as presented? Opposed? Motion carried. Right. Okay. And ARPA funds approval, item 7.
Is that this one, Larry?
You have in front of you, says Androscoggin County ARPA request. First thing you need to do is the Treasury Department, when they made their final rule, you can approve $10 million to the amount allocated in the lost revenue section. You can do it either way. You can do it the original way, or you can do the 10 million. And so it would make it real clear if we voted to accept the 10 million under that section. of ARPA rules. And then, I've given you a little more, in another sheet, about the medical contract, where for 10 months, the calendar year, which I wanted to make you aware of, is 498,921, for the full year. Heating controls in the jail, 151, and the ductwork cleaning is 50. The approval that you made for HVAC expenditures was for engineering, and that heating controls in the jail was in the 2021 budget, and it didn't get carried forward into the in 22, and because they had a lot of less revenue last year than they did, and so we ended up not in a good shape in the jail because of that lost revenue from the previous year. So that didn't get carried forward, and it is clearly ARPA qualified, and as well as the ductwork cleaning that we want to get done sooner rather than later. That's up to between 40 and 50,000, so we've budgeted 50. COVID testing, 5,000. The grant assistant in the treasurer's office, 43,000, and that's over 2 years. And then the sheriff's vehicle you just did from 172,380.
Yes, Commissioner.
Now, the 10 million falling under lost revenue section, is this the 10 million we've already dealt with, or are we talking about the new 10 million coming?
It's the total amount out of the 21 million. Okay. Out of the 21 million, 10 million can be designated as that.
Yes, Commissioner.
Clarice, is that the route you like for the 10 million?
Yes, it leaves it more flexible for us. That would be, that's what.
Okay, so we need to act upon these this evening. Okay.
We would appreciate it, yes,
Yeah.
so we can get moving on anything and everything.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Commissioner?
Medical for the jail. Any word on when they're starting?
We're currently under contract with this company.
I knew you're under contract with them.
And
They
the
didn't have
24-hour
anybody yet.
coverage will kick in March 1st.
March 1st.
Because they have hiring issues.
Yep.
Now carrying us through our calendar year for this contract. So we March until December.
So March they would.
And then we have to go to bid this year. So we will have to bid a new company at some point this year.
Have they assured us that they'll start March 1st?
Yes, they want to start February 1st. We have one program. It'll be better to wait a month.
Okay.
And save that expenditure and get the full staff in.
Due to the confusion and apparently my not explaining very well at the last meeting, I have not yet signed, and I'll be signing tomorrow that contract, but they're already asking for it, so.
Commissioner Morgan?
I guess I'm still confused. You just said that we're signing a contract from March 1st to December 31st?
The contract is going up March 1st to 24-hour medical coverage. Currently, we have 12-hour medical coverage. So effective March 1st, it's going to 24-hour coverage.
But when we look at this paper, you wrote January to June 2022 is the 291.
Yes, again, that
So-
291 was for fiscal year 21, June, January,
For fiscal 22.
yeah, January to June, because it's 6 months.
Correct, but he's saying we're signing a contract till December.
Yes, because the contract is for January through December.
The fiscal year is what's on the paper, but the contract starts in March, that's all.
And the jail's on a fiscal budget, not a calendar like the rest of everybody, which is super awesome.
So we're going to do by contracts, you're going to do it for a calendar year, and split it into parts of the year, something like that. Yeah. Right by two.
Is there, is there a way of establishing just a 6-month contract to bring at least the contracts in line with the budget? Oh, they're two separate budgets.
Yeah, and the best way to do it is to bring one of either the county onto the July, June fiscal year, or jail onto the calendar year. Ideally, it'd be best to put the county onto the, July, June fiscal year. But the problem with that is you've got to finance it. You've got to figure out how to do that 6 months. And there was a place in the law where a county could borrow money for 5 years, and towns could take up to 5 years to pay the 6-month budget, and then then everybody would be whole. And I was looking at that some time ago and discovered that they have repealed that section of law, so I'm not sure exactly the methodology. But ideally that would be, but you've got to figure out how to deal with that 6-month period.
Can you pass an 18-month budget?
You can, but I can just imagine my phone, when suddenly they get a tax bill for, it's just the amount would.
I think I know about the financing piece that you're talking about.
Yeah, good, because I was surprised that it had been repealed, and I'm thinking, okay, they must have replaced it with something, but I haven't found it something.
There was a recodification that took place, and I'm wondering if it might be someplace else, but I don't know that. So.
Good, thanks.
Okay. So to deal with this particular, yes, Commissioner.
Take it away.
I was just, will we need to deal with this in two separate motions when we go forward? Approving the 10 million and then each separate.
Approve the 10 million and then just approve what is in front of you for the rest of it.
All right. Curious about how that worked. Commissioner Ames.
Hey, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 10 million to be the amount allocated under the lost revenue section of the ARPA final rules.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
So we're just voting on that. We're not voting on
Top
that.
one.
Just
the
top
top.
one.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what we're voting on. No, I have no questions.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. We'll approve the 10 million.
Oh, I guess I'll be that guy tonight.
Yeah. Mr. Ames.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the medical contract for 24 hours jail for the calendar year of 2022 to $498,921.
Okay. Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Michael? Motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Commissioner Porter?
Out of respect for Commissioner Krishna Sally, she had a lot of questions about this at the last meeting, and I would prefer to wait till she attends the meeting. I'm not necessarily saying I don't want to vote for it, but I feel she was very adamantly discouraged at the end of the meeting in not understanding exactly how this was being presented.
One of her
should wait for her.
One of her objections seemed to, and we can't wait because I need to get that thing signed and out because they've got to be hiring people to start. And anyway, and it should have been signed out a month ago, but I deliberately held up because of the confusion. Sally's, Commissioner Krishna's one of the main things that she talked about was, well, yeah, but this is going to be an ongoing budgetary item once the ARPA money runs out. And I was reminded that indeed, when that came into the budget and before commissioners, before the budget committee, it was very plainly spelled out that this is something that we needed and was going to be putting in the budget. But seeing as it was eligible for those funds, we could save those dollars for the next 2 or 3 years and not put it into the budget. So you're in essence helping yourself, because otherwise it would have had to be in the budget. And it's almost a necessity to have 24-hour coverage today, because just the way things are, the way the whole medical establishment is. But anyway, I think that was her concern. But it was clear, and some of the budget committee members actually said that, yeah, that's saving us money now. We know we're going to have to pay it, and we know it's coming. So it's at the point where we can't wait any longer, because they have to get people up and running, operating.
Commissioner Michael?
Madam Chair, I pretty much buy that. And also, I talked to Sally quite a bit, and if Sally or really anybody on the board called and said, has some concerns about something, can you table that? Typically, I'd vote to do so, but I haven't heard from her, hearing that it's an urgency here, so I'll be voting yes.
Okay. Do you have any other comments or concerns? Discussion? All those in favor? Pass. Opposed?
Sorry.
Okay. And is there anything, do we need to act on any of the other issues?
It would be good to just clean them all up, and so that we can move things on, because the heating controls, those are being put in and are, so we're either going to be paying it out of opera, or we're going to be overdrafting the jail budget. One of the two. And again, that was starting, but as crazy as the last couple of years have been, getting parts and all of that stuff, and it just simply didn't work quick enough. And the bottom line is, it is clearly under the opera rules. So.
All right, I move that we approve the heating controls in the jail, $151,000, for the ductwork cleaning for $50,000, which I understand is a periodic expense. The COVID testing for $5,000, and the grant assistant for the treasurer's office. Didn't we do that before? No, we just discussed it for $43,000.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? No. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Fabulous. Okay. Next item, executive session. Under title 1, MRSA, section 4056C, discussion of acquisition rights
Appreciate you coming.
of real property. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? Okay.
Can you make a statement that you will not make any voting?
Yes, we will not be making any decisions or voting on anything following the executive session.